Welcome back to another episode of Home Service Headquarters. Today we welcome on Teddy Slack, a true service business lifer. We talk through it all, from his days growing up inside his family business to where he is now building his sixth different successful service business. An incredible chat with one of the smartest guys I've been lucky enough to talk with. You're not going to want to miss this. Let's hop into the interview. Welcome back to another episode of Home Service Headquarters. Today we welcome on a special guest, Teddy Slack. Teddy is one of the cooler people I think I've had the opportunity to talk to through this podcast so far, and a little bit of a different guest in the way that you've done it not once in terms of starting service businesses, but 5 times, and now working on a 6th, and also have a whole bunch of different things you're working on in terms of podcast, BizScore, and a bunch of other things we'll get into. But thank you very much, Teddy, for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Jack, for having me, man. I'm excited about this.
Very much so. Start where we always start, where I'm sure you always start every time you talk, and just let's go to the beginning, a personal history and kind of leading into a career history. I know those for you kind of intertwine a little bit, but start us from a day one in the service industry and take us through a little bit to where you are now at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as a young kid, as literally 3-4 years old. My father was an entrepreneur, so he would drag me out to the job site. He would literally drop me off and let his foreman basically babysit me. That was his way of spending time with me. And I would just hang out on the job sites. They hand me like a half shovel because that's all I could carry at the time. And yes, I grew up literally in the trenches as a kid. And then I went to school, I went to college for business marketing and management. Didn't learn much there, as most people, know once they go through college. I learned everything once I got thrown into the actual real world.
Yeah.
And out of college, I did some commercial real estate for a year. Didn't love it. Lived off credit cards at I was like 23 years old, living off credit cards, trying to make that big commission check. And I did that for 12 months. And I was just like, it's just not for me. So my father's like, hey, listen, I'll give you an opportunity to come work in the office, which I've never up to that point was able to work in the office. I was always the guy out in the field. Mm-hmm. And I put a lot of time and summers and stuff working for my old man out in the field. So I knew the actual industry, which he was in commercial environmental work. We did big underground oil tanks and gas tank work and stuff like that for DPW yards and commercial gas stations and industrial buildings.
Okay.
And essentially, once I told him I didn't want to do this commercial real estate thing anymore, he's like, well, why don't we start a residential, environmental business where we do homeowner tanks, which in New Jersey, a lot of homes are heated. A lot of the older homes are heated with underground heating oil tanks. Mm-hmm. Now, these tanks were steel, so when they're put in the 30s and 40s, they corrode over time. So what happens when they corrode? The oil leaks into the ground. Now you need to do a big environmental cleanup. So my father didn't really go after that work. So he's like, here's a desk. I'll give you a desk. I'll give you a phone and a yellow pad, not even a computer. He's very old school, my old man, He's like, if you could get this phone ringing, he's like, we'll start to build a little division. So that's exactly what we did. And, right out the gate, year one, I was able to build that, no name, nothing. I started an LLC, got the logo, create the website. And back then it was 2004, 2005. So PPC was just kind of coming around, with Google and everything. And, there's a couple guys maybe in the industry that were doing it. I'm like, we need to get on this because he was doing a lot of yellow page advertising. So I was like, let's get on PPC. Let's see what happens. Boom, their phone starts ringing. So we were able to build that to about $1.3 million year one, that division, which,
wow.
Was pretty good with no name and everything. So, very happy. My mother was involved at the time. It was a family run, operation. She was helping me with the books and stuff like that. That's kind of how I learned, kind of got my feet wet and cut my teeth in actual, service businesses, was starting that residential division.
Incredible. I love the half shovel at the beginning. Yeah. And then, he throws you a legal pad too. He really threw to the old sink or swim method. Yes. And luckily for him, it worked out. Or maybe that was by design the whole time, knew what you were capable of. So with that business, you're kind of starting this new division. Are you using the same crews and in terms of like actual on the job? So you didn't kind of start that side of it, more of just borrowing those resources?
Yeah. So initially, it was very bootstrappy. Like he didn't take a bunch of money and put it into an account and said, all right, let's invest into this business. He was literally like, You get the job signed. I went out on the first, I think maybe 3 or 4 sales like calls. We was in person at the time, and me and him went. I just shadowed him and listened to him do the sale, and then I built myself a little sales deck so I could understand the process because I was learning it all too at that point.
Yeah.
And after like 4 or 5 sales calls, it's like, all right, you're on your own. And I started doing the sales, and then I would borrow his manpower and his equipment as needed. And then eventually we stashed enough money away from the jobs I did, and then we bought a dump truck for that division, and slowly bought equipment, and then I slowly hired my own guys, and we built it up that way.
That's incredibly cool and probably pretty unique, rather than starting from the what and the who. You kind of started with the marketing and sales side of it and got to, really work and make it happen without kind of doing some of those beginning things. It's unique. A lot of hard work, but maybe, not what people think when you're starting a different business. Very cool.
Yeah, but what it taught me was going through that process, because I did every part of the business. So literally I did the sales, I did the permits when I had to fill out a permit for the township. I set the inspections up. I went out and did the actual job, and then I learned how to operate the equipment. So like I learned and then I did the accounting. I had to do the invoicing, collect the money. So it really taught me every aspect of the service business at that time. And I didn't know going through it, but it was like a crash course in running a business. And I learned every aspect of it, and I'm very grateful that he put me through that, because that was able to basically teach me everything I need to know on how to run day-to-day operations of a home service business.
Incredible. And my only other question is important question. At what point did you upgrade from that legal pad to an actual computer in that process? Year one, or were we talking legal pad for a while?
No. Yeah, I mean, so when I first got, he was using a fax machine, bro. Like I'm talking old school, like 2004. He was still using a fax machine. They had one of those like typewriters. They were using a typewriter to put contracts together. And I was like, yeah, this is not going to work. And then my first couple of sales jobs I did, I typed up the thing. I went out there and I was like, this is just crazy. We need to maybe email the customers the proposal, So I got a computer, then I started sending the proposals via email, and I started to change things pretty quickly.
And did he, realizing kind of the better flow of things on that side, did he start pretty quickly applying that to the other divisions?
Not really. I mean, it was always very separate. So like his business, this commercial division is all public bid work. So he had a full-time estimator, and they would go after public bids and stuff like that. So it was a completely different business model. So it was completely separate for sure. Yeah.
I do love diving into those different things. The classic response of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I feel like that's so common for people who have been successful. And I do see that side of it. If I am running a successful business, why do I want to change some of those things? But that's probably a whole nother podcast on, talking about some of the classic ways that old school service businesses run and how that can improve. And I'm sure you run into that with, some of the other things that you do. Very cool.
No, absolutely. And when you come across guys who have been operating as long as my father was at that time, they could be a little bit hard headed, because they've done it one way for a long time, and to try to get them to change, it could be tough for sure.
It's a battle. I love it. I'm not gonna lie. Before I had to do a little research on the residential oil tank business. Where I am, we're all natural gas, and so we had talked previously, and which is kind of cool. It's fun hearing about kind of, I don't want to say niche services, but I guess it is, regional services. That's very cool. I love that start, and kind of a unique thing in the way that you got your start, and a lot of hard work in building it that quickly, which I think. Now seeing where you are and what you've done is not a surprise, but at the time, a pretty darn cool story. So that's business one. From there, we have a handful of other businesses that I would love to talk through. And I know a roofing business that you're currently starting. So I don't want to spend too much time on businesses 2 through 5, but give me a high level on what those businesses were in terms of industry, how long you operated them, kind of what the situation looked like, and then where you were at when you decided to exit and start the next.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you a quick just a history kind of, and where I made my mistakes, because I definitely made some mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
So I started with my father, that division in 2004, 2005, around that time. We ran that up to 2009. Unfortunately, my mother passed away of cancer. She was part of the business. It kind of drew like, I would say kind of division between me and my father. And it became very difficult working together. So I actually decided to leave the family business in 2009, and I went off on my own, and I started the exact same business I was in. So it was a residential oil tank service business. And I went off on my own, same thing, no name, nothing. And literally the first year we did like 1.8 million roughly in revenue. So it took off like crazy. And, I'm 28 years old at this point. It definitely could get to your head when now this is my second business. Within this first 12 months, I'm doing $1 million plus in revenue. And I'm like, this is so easy. I'm so great at business. I could do this with anything. Well, no, you definitely can't. And I definitely tried though. So I went into a lot of different directions. I started another business with a gentleman where he was in the hazmat spill response business. So he would go out, emergency calls at 24/7. Let's say a tractor trailer flips over on the side of the road. There's chemicals on the truck. He would go out there in full suits, the team of guys would go out there and clean that stuff up, or go into a factory and do a cleanup if someone spills a hazardous drum or something like that. So I backed him and we went into business basically together, and that business took off. Same thing, 2-3 million the first year. We did very well. That business ran from basically like 2012 until about 2017. Also during that time, I decided to start flipping houses. And this is where I started to I went too many different directions. You know what I mean? Like I was chasing top line revenue. I didn't know any better. I learned from my father, who's old school, and he didn't have a business background. He just was hustle and grit and grind and hard work. And, so I chased top line revenue because I thought that was the way to do it, and I chased in every direction, not even just like a focused chase. I was like, I'll go in this business. I'll go in that business. I'll invest in this guy. I'll invest in this. So I started doing all these things, and you spread yourself too thin. You can't, you can't do that. And for a while it worked. I made a lot of money. I mean, I generated probably from 2009 until 2018, probably close to $75 million in revenue between all the companies I was involved with. But I went into flipping real estate. I flipped 24 houses in like 2 years. I had a team of people helping me with design team, and I had subcontractors. I raised $8 million to do that. I didn't, use any of my personal money. So I was raising capital. I was just doing so many things. And finally, the last business that I got involved with that really kind of hurt me was around 2017. I got involved with the fracking industry in Ohio, which now I never even been to Ohio, but I had something presented to me. They're like, you want to invest in this business? It was 100% my company. And I was presented with basically the crews. All I had to do and the contracts, all I had to do was invest in the equipment. It was about $1 million in equipment. And I took the shot at it. I was like, you know what? I'll try it. You know what I mean? It sounds great. You have all these contracts, you have the manpower. Yeah. I just need to invest the money. And I did. I personally guaranteed $1 million equipment loan. And it went really well. Same thing. We were doing $300,000 a month in revenue from day one, essentially. And that lasted about 6 months, to the point where, my plan, because I didn't have a ton of cash at this time, a young kid, I was spending all my money, just not being smart about it. And, essentially the plan was to do, I was going to factor my invoices. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am not. I would love to go into it.
Yeah. So something I would say, stay away from 100%, never do it, but it's yes. So it's a very risky way of trying to finance a business. Essentially what you could do is you could sell your invoices. You could sell them to a company that hypothetically you owed $30,000. You sell it for, let's say 20 or 25,000. They keep $5,000. So they're basically forwarding you the money before you get your receivables. Yep. And so that was my plan. I was like, all right, well, I'm working for publicly traded companies. These are massive companies that I'm working for. We were buying equipment to basically move contaminated water around the fracking industry. Okay. And I'm like, well, they're publicly traded companies, they're got to have good credit. Well, they didn't have good credit. So the factoring company's like, we can only give you, even though you're making $300,000 in revenue a month, we're only going to be able to give you $50,000. I was like, no. Whoa. I'm like, I need $150,000 a month just to survive. Yeah. And they wouldn't do it. And at that time, again, I wasn't educating myself. I wasn't reading books. I was just hustling and trying to make it with grit and hard work. And essentially I had to shut that whole division down, and, it became a big issue, and, it affected my other businesses. So I kind of had to do a restart in 2018. And that's when I start reading books and start educating myself. And I was like, all right, this business thing is not as easy as everybody makes it seem to be.
Or as
And
you made it seem, kind of, because you know, a bunch of
well, yeah, because
success off the bat, you kind of feel invincible for a little while, I'm
yes,
sure, just naturally.
100%. I mean, every business I did like right away was boom, 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 and it took off. So, but again, too many things at once. If I really just
Sure.
concentrated on the one business and I really went really hard and just on that one business, I would have been way better off. But you know, you live and you learn, you know, and that's just you kind of learn by trial by fire as an entrepreneur, you know.
Right. Yeah, and you covered a lot of different, you know, it's funny that they're all kind of service based, which you stick to what you know a little bit, but you're, you know, touching a lot of different industries, a lot of
Yes.
different
Yep.
types of services. Uh, you know, and there's only so much that you can probably glean and transfer over. And then eventually, you know, you hit that point where, like you said, you spread yourself too thin, you run into something you weren't expecting. How many of those businesses then during this timeline from, you know, business two, I'll say, when you branched off and started your own residential tank business, to kind of the fracking, how many did you run concurrently?
Shoot. I mean, let's see. They were all going at the same time at one
Okay.
point. I was even doing a door to door, I had a door to door knocking business where we were selling energy deregulation. I partnered with a friend of mine. We had like 30 guys knocking doors in the Bronx. I was there twice a week at one point. I
Okay.
had so much going on, bro. I mean, honestly, when I think about it at this time, like I think about back what was going, I'm like, it stresses me out just thinking about all the things I
Yeah,
had
I'm
going
starting
on.
to get sweaty over here.
Yeah, I mean, and I did have good people, and I had 70 something employees between all the companies at once. So
Mhm.
it's not like I was like doing this all by myself. Like I had a lot of employees, I had a full time CFO. I mean, I had a team of people to help me
Yeah.
manage it all. But you know, I didn't know about systems and processes and checks and balances and all these all these things that I know now that I would never allow. I mean, my bookkeeper was robbing from me. Like, you know, the other
Sure.
guy was running the hazmat company. He started doing Fugazi stuff. So I had to shut that business down. So like,
Sure.
I just didn't have everything in place. I didn't have the right things in place because I didn't know about systems and stuff until I really started educating myself, you know?
Right. And it's like we said, like with the success, it's almost like success breeds more success until eventually it reaches a tipping point. Just a dumb question that popped in my head. How many hours were you working during this time? There's only so many hours in the
Yeah,
day. Were you
I
sleeping?
was never home, bro. And I didn't know about building a business for valuation purposes versus a luxury style business. Like I didn't know these different things. So I was involved in so many different things and I was way too involved. Like I should have had the systems in place and being able to train people to get things off of my table. I didn't. I was working from 6 in the morning till 8, 9 o'clock at night. And then I'd get a call sometimes at 1 in the morning. Hey, we
Right.
got a spill. It's out by you. You want to respond to it? I'm like, let's go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I get in the car and go, you know? So it's like, it was crazy, bro, how many hours I was putting in.
Yeah. Hustled yourself almost, you know, probably into the ground, which to
Yes.
be able to pivot to where you're at now is impressive, because I feel like a lot of people, you know, that would experience what you experienced probably would have thrown their hands up and been like, you know what, I'm going to find a
100%.
different job. I'm not going
Yep.
to, you know, go through all this again. Uh, that's incredible, an incredible story, and you know exactly why I wanted to have you on to dive into some of this stuff. So all of this, what was the tipping point? You know, maybe there were a few tipping points that you started to kind of walk things back, exit some different businesses, and start to focus on what you're doing now a little bit in terms of helping other people,
Yep.
or starting a different business. What was that tipping point?
Yeah, so I mean, it would go back to that time where I had to unwind that company that I had $1 million personal guarantee on, and they were coming after everything at that point. So I had to like really sit with myself, and yeah, like you said, like, all right, what do I do next? Do I go get a job? Do I, what's next here? And I had to really do some soul searching and think like, okay, well, obviously what I've done here in the last 15 years is I've done some really great things. I've generated a lot of revenue, but like obviously I don't know as much as I should. So what I did is I started picking up books. And when I tell you I start reading, and I never used to be a big reader, but when I tell you I read so many books and I listened to so many podcasts and I got onto YouTube and I just start really educating myself about really how to run a business the right way and how to build a business for value purposes. So then I got obsessed with, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it with one company. I'm going to go back to my roots, the company that always was so great, my tank business, which I had the entire time and it was always profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is the business I'm going to concentrate on. And that's
Okay.
exactly what I did. I basically reorganized the companies. I went back to my roots, started a company called Simple Tank Services. and with the intentions of simplifying that business and really, putting the systems in place and really
Right.
building that business for value purposes. And, that's where I just went, and it took off like crazy because I was solely focused on that.
Hmm.
And we went from 0 to 4 million in like 2.5 years, and we sold by year three. And I exited for 5 times multiple in 2022. So that was great. I mean, that was the plan going into it, and we built it to sell it. And I learned a lot on the way up, and I became obsessed with value and as opposed to running for lifestyle purposes.
Right. Yeah. Wow. It's an incredible. I mean, you spent 10 to 15 years almost just without
Yeah.
realizing you were learning literally every corner, nook and cranny of business in all different types of businesses, all service based, but spent all this time learning in that reflection period essentially where you said you started to educate yourself and then pivoting that it's incredibly natural, but it's also just like mind boggling to think of the amount of information that you had to go off of and the reflection you probably went through. Uh, Another dumb question. This is where my mind goes. Do you remember what that like first book was? Do you remember like the first, or maybe YouTube, the first thing you picked up when you kind of did that pivot, that tipping point? You're like, all right, I'm going to dive into the education aspect of it. What was that first thing?
I would say Built to Sell. It was by John Werla, was one of the first books that really kind of opened my eyes. There's a couple other ones. Simple Numbers by Greg Crabtree is a really good book for finance for service-based business or any
Sure.
businesses. Really, that's a really great book. And those two books really kind of changed opened my eyes, and were like, whoa, like, okay, I'm doing this all wrong. Like,
Sure.
and then when I learned about it, I go, oh, EBITDA, basically, is how your business is valued, right? So that's basically layman terms is like your net profit and
Yep.
everything, and you shouldn't be involved in the day to day, which I was involved in the day to day with all the companies. So I'm
Yeah.
like, all right. So now I start learning this. I'm like, all right, now I'm obsessed with like increasing that EBITDA and then also getting myself out of the day to day, but the right way, putting the systems
Mhm.
in place and the processes, because you got to be able to hand off a well-oiled machine. You're not going to sell a business that depends on you, right? So all these
Yeah.
things I started to learn, and I became obsessed with how to do it. And basically by year, like between like when I started 2018, by 2019 and a half, almost 2020, I was out of the day to day
Okay.
of my business, and I started like doing things that I enjoyed. I actually started a YouTube channel
Yeah.
for the business, and it really helped grow that business. And I was doing things that I would never be able to do. Like before, I was operating heavy equipment, I was driving
Yeah.
dump trucks, I was doing the sales, I was doing the books, and I was
Right.
involved in everything.
Did that feel foreign? Kind of that switch. I know you were
Yes.
working towards it. Was there ever like a almost like a fish out of water moment when you got to that point where you're able to extract yourself from the day to day? Was there like a shocked moment ever?
Well, it is. It's like,
Good
it's
or
weird because
bad?
when you're doing it for 20 years and all of a sudden it's like the business doesn't depend on you, and you're like, all right, what do I do? That's when I was like, you know what? I could start this YouTube channel that I always wanted to start, and I could hire a videographer to follow me around. And I literally put myself back out in the field just because I wanted to get content. It wasn't because
Sure.
they needed me out there. It's like they didn't need me to operate the equipment, but I went out there to make content, which was fun. I actually enjoyed it. I was like, all right, this is cool. And then all my customers, they would call and they'd be like, oh, the guy in the beard, I watch all his videos, and nobody in the industry had a YouTube channel. So we really
Right.
stuck out. We were all over social media. It was 2020, it was COVID. So everybody was on their phones, and
Yeah.
we really helped blow the business up. And to this day, I'm like very, very sold on content. And I tell all my clients that I consulted with, like, if you can make content, I mean, it's a game changer for sure.
Incredible. So was that, you said you always kind of wanted to do the YouTube side of things. Was that with the intention of, what you're saying, pouring back into the business, or was that more of like hey, I've went through an incredible journey, which we've just spent 20 minutes chatting about, and you wanted to share that side of it, or was it more
No,
the
back
business
then it
side?
was just about the business, because I was so focused on that business.
Hmm.
I was literally like not doing anything else. I mean, I didn't start
Yeah.
making content for, basically about business until this year, 2025. I started my YouTube channel and everything.
Yeah.
Started to talk about my experience and what I've gone through and some of the things to kind of help people. And but back then, 2020 was all about oil tanks. I mean, I just made content about oil
Sure.
tanks, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. I read a book, Marcus Sheridan's book, They Ask You Answer. Amazing book. If you haven't read it, I absolutely recommend it. He has a new one out now. It's called Endless Customers. It's right here on my desk. That's his 2025 version. And I just followed his process essentially with making content, and it really did help, and it was huge.
Incredible. So now a lot of what you do in terms of like the new Teddy Slack and modern contractor and things that we haven't even gotten into, which I apologize if we're dragging on, but I find your story
No, it's
fascinating.
cool.
So
Yeah, no worries.
I dive in. You've kind of found this niche in scaling, and you were scaling this whole time almost naturally. I don't want to say naturally because obviously there's a lot that goes into it. But as you pivoted, that tipping point we talked about to simple tank services, was scaling on your mind from day one? Was that something, you kind of set out with a goal like, hey, I want to scale this and eventually remove myself from the day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started Simple Tank, that was the goal, was that I was going to sell within three years. That was the
Okay.
goal. I was like, I need 3 years of clean books. I'm like that, and I'm going to sell. So it was 100% the plan as far as scaling it. So that was one of the issues why I went in so many different directions, because I always knew how difficult it was to scale that business. It was a very niche business. So
Right.
the laws in New Jersey are very, very strict, right? And when it
Okay.
comes to oil tanks, but if you go across state lines to New York, Pennsylvania, completely different set of laws,
Okay.
completely different licensing. So in order to grow this business, you need to have specialized employees, right? They have to have special licenses. They have to know how to drive. They have to have CDLs to drive trucks. They need to have excavating experience to operate heavy equipment. So these are special. And on top of it, they need to have a closure license in order to remove an oil tank. So that's through the state. Then the insurances are high. The equipment cost, you need $500,000 to go out there and do a $1,500 tank removal that could hopefully maybe leak and then turns into a big job. But, so you need a lot of equipment, right? And so it's not a really scalable business. And I think
Sure.
that's why when I was younger, I'm like, all right, well, that's why I'll go into these other industries because I could scale it easier. That's what I was thinking, but it was not the right way to think about it. And then, so when I got in Simple Tank, I was like, all right, I'm going to get out of this industry because, again, it would be very difficult to get to, it's even 10, 15 million. There's not one company in the state of New Jersey that's at that level, even today. When we sold, we were about 4 million in revenue. We were the biggest player in the industry by far. I mean, there's other guys that did other services, but just oil tank guys, that's all we did is residential oil tanks. We were by far the biggest player. We had 4 crews every day doing work. And to this day, they're still the biggest company out in the state. So,
Cool.
It's a very small industry. Maybe there's 100 guys in the whole state that do it compared to like roofing now. There's 2,000 guys in 7 counties in New Jersey. I mean, it's absolutely insane how many roofers are. But so that's one of the reasons why I want to get out of the business, because it's not scalable. And yes, I made it very profitable. It was the most profitable home service company I've still to this day, even after all my consulting, come across.
Okay.
But you can only get it to so much. So. At the level I was at, 4 million in revenue, 43% EBITDA, basically, that's like running a $10 million roofing business, maybe a $15 million roofing business, depending on how profitable you are. But that was about, as much as I could scale it to where I wanted to, because otherwise I would have had to invest a lot more money in equipment and just the people. It's just a difficult business to run,
Right. You're kind of landlocked in a way. We talked about it a little bit. It's a regional service. So in terms of like franchising or expanding, width wise, like there really is nothing you can do besides what you were doing.
And there's no private equity interest in that industry. They're just not into it. I mean, they're into the commercial side of environmental work. Their private equity is in that area, but not in residential environmental work. There was just no interest. I mean, and I was 4 million in revenue. I mean, we were about $1.6 million in profit when I sold per year. And, there was no interest from private equity at that time. So I was like, I want to get into something where I could get some interest from the big players,
Sure. Which is a good lead in. That's it sounds like naturally where the roofing business kind of started and what you're working on, at least on the business side of things, because obviously you have a bunch of other things in terms of the YouTube and some of those things. But that's where the roofing kind of started, was that cap that you basically realized in that industry and wanted to get into something else.
Exactly. Yeah. So I exited in 22. I took some time off, spent time with family. I thought about what I wanted to do next. I did some consulting, which I didn't love. I mean, I still do some of it, but I don't love it. It's not my it's not my favorite thing. It's not a super scalable thing that I want to get in. I was just doing it just to have something to do, Yeah, just to stay in the game, stay fresh. I love talking to business owners. That's one thing. I just love talking to other guys that are in the game and, and just kicking ideas around. And so I was like, what, let me see if I can help some other guys grow, and, I did that for a little bit. That's Modern Contractor. So, it's still around, but so some of the guys that I consulted with were actually in the roofing space. That's how I come across the roofing space.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah, I started to learn about the business model and I was like, wow, I'm like, I come from the environmental business. I'm like, there's so much red tape in the environmental business. I'm
Yeah.
like, holy shit. So in New Jersey, roofing, there's no permits required, no inspections.
Okay.
Okay, which is huge. The licensing is super simple. It's a one-page application. So pretty much anybody could get in. And then 95% of the industry is a subcontractor model. So, and there's tons and tons of subcontractors in my market
Okay.
that are quality, that are good guys, that are good teams of guys that can do the actual work.
Hmm.
So that's why I like the business model. It's a very simple business model. It's basically marketing, sales, operations, and there's no township involvement, no inspections. For me, that's like, I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, there's 500 townships in New Jersey, 500 towns, and they all have their own rules on when you go to apply for a permit. So you have to know every single one of the rules. They expect you to anyways. It's supposed to be uniform construction code, but it's definitely not.
Sure.
So can you imagine? I mean, at the tank business, we had 100 active files at any given time we were managing. So 100 active files is basically like probably somewhere around 75 different towns that we're working with. And it was a nightmare with what time the towns come and inspect, how much they charge, what the permitting process is, so all that goes away with the roofing space. It's literally just sales, operation, marketing, sales, and operation. It's
Right.
pretty busy,
Yeah.
basic business model.
That probably feels like a massive weight is lifted just
Yes.
personally, but in terms of what you're saying, we've talked a little bit, high level about like processes and things. Like I can't even imagine how you would begin to try to track, 75 different towns with 100 different files that X amount of pages per. Um, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
and then forget about it. If the tank leaked, which about half the jobs we did, the tanks leaked, we would have to put a 300-page report together for the DEP, and they would have to review it, and they would send you a letter of clean bill of health, essentially. So can you imagine the paperwork? I mean, I had to put all those processes together and train people how to do it and hand those processes off, and we had impeccable reputation. And we had he's got almost 800 reviews now, I just really simplified it. Hence, Simple Tank Services. I simplified those processes down to where I made a video process for everything down to cutting a check in that business to writing those 300-page reports. You could go and watch a video on how to do it. And that's how I train my people. And that's where I was able to really push the valuation up too, because I put all those systems and process together. I simplified it so much. And yeah, now I'm building those out for the roofing business. I'm like, whoa, this is like taking candy from a baby. It's so easy. Like there's no reports. This is crazy. No inspections, no permits. Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Incredible. So you talked a little bit about, that pivot from the oil tank business to roofing, and you said you had worked with other people in the industry. Was there like a process where you were kind of reviewing, I know I want to go into a different industry. Were there other industries you were kind of looking into, or did roofing kind of just stand out?
Yeah, so of course now, because I've been in so many different industries and I've gone in so many different directions, and I think this is where this is where the benefit is. If yes, I took some losses and I had some failures, but if you don't go through that stuff, you don't really know. People could tell you all day long, but if you don't go through it and have that real life experience, it's kind of hard to understand really what you want. So I knew going into this, there was a few things specifically that I want to stay away from. Number one was heavy equipment. I definitely didn't want to be in a business that needed heavy equipment. I'm not saying you can't make money in those industries, because obviously you can, but I lived heavy equipment for years and years and years, and it's specialized people to operate that equipment and the maintenance on it alone, the insurance. It's an absolute nightmare. So I was like, I want to stay away from heavy equipment. That was one of the things.
Okay.
The other thing is I want to try to get into something where you didn't need as much employees where they need to be certified and licensed, right? Because it becomes an issue to try to find those guys that have that special license and everything. So I was like, all right, let me, so that's why I start really looking into all these things. Like, I wanted to have an easy business model. I really wanted an easy, simple business model that's scalable. And, that's how I came across the roofing space. I started consulting with a friend of mine who owns 4 roofing companies in South Jersey. And he comes from the solar space where he generates all his work in the solar industry from door to door, right? That's how those guys generate work. So he's got a huge team. They do about 60 million in solar, and he starts buying up these roofing companies, but he doesn't know how to generate leads like digital marketing and the stuff that I understand. So I was like, listen, let me help you out. I started consulting with him, and that's how I learned about the business model. I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is it? I'm like, this is how it's done? So I had him put a roof on my house, and I went through the whole process. I watched everything. I was like, wow. I'm like, all right, this is cool. I'm like, I could get into this. So I started really like diving into learning about the roofing space. And different manufacturers and distributors and all that stuff. And then, yeah, just kind of was like, you know what? I think this is it. This is the direction I want to go in, you know?
Incredible. What a story. I feel like it's maybe rare to start where you did with something so complicated and have the spot where you can pivot to now something that it's almost like shockingly simple compared to, to
Yes.
what you were doing. That has to just feel like you have so much more room to operate, so much more room to expand and try different things if you wanted to. And incredible. So
Yeah.
how far along are we with the roofing business?
I mean, we're brand new, man. We just went live in November, so
Okay.
we are literally. I mean, well, I was like probably the end of October, last week of October. We just officially went live, and it's cool, man. I mean, I got, at this point, I think I'm up to like maybe 15 leads so far, which is
Okay.
cool. So I'm running them down, some repairs, some new roofs, we're just tweaking all the processes now. We're dialing in the CRM and the proposals and
Yep.
all that fun stuff in the beginning where you got to really dial everything in and learn everything, in the beginning and start building those processes out. But I'm doing everything. So how I always start at my companies is I'm involved with everything in the beginning. And, I have to, because if you're not, like, how do you know how to hand it off to someone
Right.
to make sure that they're doing it properly? So what I like to do is I like to perfect it on like the way I do it. And then I like to put that system and process together and then hand it off to someone so I can watch to make sure they're doing it properly. So right now I'm doing everything. I'm running out there. I'm jumping on the roofs. I'm doing drone inspections.
Okay.
I'm putting together the proposals. I mean, I'm literally doing everything. And I expect to do this probably for the first 12 months.
Mhm.
And then eventually I'll try to slowly scale myself out of this day to day and work on some higher level stuff.
Yeah. It's very cool. It's almost like, you spent the 10 to 15 years, like I said earlier, of just growth and a ton of learning. You had the, period of reflection, and now you're kind of almost culminating all of this and focusing it on one business with less restrictions. And, you're however many days in, 2-3 weeks in is all at the time of recording. What a journey, man. I'm excited to kind of watch. Might have to have you back on 12 months from now or something and say, all right, how did that process go? And just focus on the roofing business. I could probably have you back on for like 15 different episodes.
No, that'd be cool, bro. I mean, actually, so I'll kind of get into a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of insight on what I'm doing.
Okay.
So because it is roofing, but I am doing something for I guess you could say it's really to generate leads, but it's also to build out a network of referral partners. So I was telling you a little bit of pre-recording. So I'm building out an in-person podcast studio in my office. I got an office, which I don't need an office, bro, for roofing right now in the beginning. I mean, you could do it from your home initially.
Yeah.
The main reasons I got an office was number one for Google, right? So for local SEO, you want to have an address. If you don't have an address, you're just not going to show up. And there's so much competition in roofing right now. If you don't have an actual address for your office, you have no shot at like showing up in the map pack. So I dominated the map pack in my last business. I plan on doing it here. It's going to take a little bit longer because it's so much competition, but and because of the competition, I'm like, all right, how do I generate leads for this business? I don't want to go to war with the private equity guys on the PPC campaigns and you're buying these leads from Angie List and all that stuff. You could spend a fortune doing that. And I'm like, how do I generate leads for this? So what I did is I built out an in-person podcast studio. We were calling it New Jersey Home Pro Podcast.
Okay.
And I have a list of 5,000 home service contractors that I built, that I essentially scraped off the internet, that all these guys, they all work around either inside of a home or around a home. So it could be windows, siding, gutters, chimney guys, landscapers, driveway guys, anybody who works around a home or in a home. And we're inviting them into our office and we're basically we're giving them the spotlight to talk about their business. So I'm interviewing them in a podcast and I'm asking about how they got in the business, how they get started, what areas they cover. And we just shooting the shit and having a conversation. And I'm building a directory out of my website where I'm giving them this platform and they're going to basically be on the directory. And then a lot of these guys need help with like marketing and stuff like that. They don't understand YouTube and this. So what we're doing is we're actually going to drive like short clips of these episodes to the directory, which is tied to Teddy Roofing. So the plan is to have in the first 12 months, 100 contractors spending, a couple $100 a month each driving traffic to my Teddy Roofing website. And that's kind of how I'm helping them, but they're also helping me. And then also we're paying a $500 referral fee out for anybody who sends us roofing leads.
Wow, man, what a journey. And so much that went into it. And now, there's been a few pivot points. I keep saying that, but where you're going now is so interesting and unique in a way with, kind of what you're doing in terms of the podcast studio. But, not so unique in terms of just the business itself. Learned a ton and now get to apply it, build those systems and processes and scale it. Is that the plan for the roofing business specifically? Is there an exit kind of in the plans?
It is, yeah. So we're planning 3 to 5 years essentially. That's the kind of the game plan. It kind of we're going to reassess at that time. It's not set in stone. Like my last business, I was like, definitely by year 3 we're selling.
Okay.
I'm not there with this yet because I think this has got so much legs. You could really scale this infinitely. I mean, you could take it to anywhere out of state. I mean, you
Right.
could really grow a roofing business. So I don't want to put a dead like time on it where I'm like, oh, I'm going to be done in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving it like a 3 to 5 year plan. We're going to kind of reassess at that time. But I'm just having fun with it, man. This is fun. Like, this is not like stressful to me.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm having a lot of fun with it. That's even with the podcast and then building out this network of contractors. It's like a blue collar networking. We're going to do monthly meetups and it's just going to, I'm just going to have fun with it and see kind of where it goes,
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, we talked about just that difference between the oil tank industry to the roofing industry. And you can almost see as we're just talking through it, that time, the difference between the two industries and where you have time to grow and channel your interests and passions. Just talking about it, I can tell you found a spot where, you can do the business side, which is definitely where a passion lies, but also you can, help and talk to other business owners, which is also a big part of the passion. And that's where I think you're going to find, you found a ton of success, but I can confidently say that this is going to follow that same path.
I mean, I'm excited about it, man. I think it's cool. It's very out of the box thinking. I haven't found anyone else who's implementing, anything like this. I mean, obviously you have your big players out there that have directories and stuff like that, but nothing like very local. I mean, this is very specific to New Jersey in our area that we serve and our market. And we're just highlighting good contractors, guys that do quality work, and they give good service, and we're giving them a platform to, tell their story, like who they are as a human too. Like, it's not just say, hey, what's your business about? Like, tell me about you as a person. How'd you get into this industry? How were you as a kid? What's your favorite restaurant in the area? You're from this area, New Jersey. What do you like to eat? Like that type of stuff. So it's more of like a human connection thing, but then also having them speak about their company and their business. This way, when homeowners get sent there, the homeowners could, they'll be able to say like, oh, I like this guy. I'm watching him on video. I connect with this guy. I want to hire him to do the windows in my house, or 100%. I want to hire him to do my driveway. So I think it's a cool idea. It's a cool concept. And a lot of these contractors, they don't have a way to get online, right? So they're not familiar with YouTube. They're not familiar with a videographer or making content. So it's an opportunity for them to just get in front of the camera, which I'm finding that some of them are like, no, bro, like I don't want to get on camera. They're just like,
I have a little bit of that.
Yeah, there's, listen, in the beginning, so did I. I mean, that's how it is, right? But everyone gets comfortable. It's about the reps. You just keep doing the reps. But but the ones that are coming on, man, they're loving it. And we're going to go live in the next, probably like 2 weeks, where we have about 6 or 7 episodes that we've already recorded. And then we're going to go live with all of them and then start pumping some ads behind it on YouTube,
Awesome. So that's going to be a separate channel, Teddy Slack.
Yeah.
And then
it'll be separate. Yeah, so Jersey Home Pro Podcast is the name of it.
Perfect.
And I'll have a separate YouTube channel, and we're going to drive traffic. So, a lot of people don't understand. So YouTube is owned by Google. So, it's the most targeted type of advertising you could do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For example, like if I want to, let's say I want to show my ad, which could just be me talking about roofs or whatever, to somebody in one county, New Jersey, that already went to Google and searched for roofing contractor near me, I could then show my YouTube ad to that person in that area. So it's niche specific and it's keyword targeted, which is super, super like targeted advertising. So you're not wasting a lot of money and you're appearing in front of people who have already searched for your services. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing for these contractors, but driving all the traffic to our directory, which is tied to our Teddy Roofing website.
Yeah. It's hard to find a symbiotic relationship in business and especially in service businesses. But I know, in the home, there are so many services and you found a way to, from a community perspective, focusing on where you are, be able to help your business, but also help a whole bunch of other businesses, which is incredibly cool. Well, hey, I don't want to take too much time, but I do have to get to our regular segments that I make sure we cover. First one is just, can it side hustle? A lot of the people we talk to and a lot of people in service businesses in general start, they have a 9-to-5 and they're getting sick of it. They want to start X, Y, or Z on the side. In general, is that something you think, and maybe looking at it from a scaling perspective, that's possible? Can service businesses start as a side hustle with the eye on scaling?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, service businesses are, in my opinion, one of the best businesses to get involved with because you don't need a lot of money. I mean, you can really, when I started my tank business, now I needed heavy equipment. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. I
Hmm.
needed insurance. I had literally $8,000 to my name when I started that company. Now, I wouldn't, I wouldn't say to anybody, hey, go do that. That's kind of crazy, but I really didn't have a choice. When I left my family business, we didn't leave on good terms. So, I mean, me and my father are closer than we ever been now, but back then
Awesome.
we didn't talk for a few years. It was ugly initially. So I had 8 grand in my name. I had no one to go to for money. I didn't know how to ask people to raise money or anything like that.
Hmm.
So I had 8 grand to my name. So yeah, absolutely. Service business, you could start with basically very little amount of money to get some traction. And then as the customers are paying you, especially if it's residential, you're getting paid when you do that service. Boom. Now that money's coming in, revenue's coming in, you can self-sustain that growth. You don't need money from outside investors. 100%. I love service businesses for that reason, for sure.
I love it. And at some point there will be back to the pivot where you can, you want to dive in full time, you want to start to
Yep.
scale. There will always be that, as long as you do good work. I think a lot of what we've talked about the last 45 minutes, the undertone is doing good work and putting processes in place.
Well, 100%. What sets me apart or sets my companies apart that has always done is just doing the best thing you can for the customer and quick response, doing what you say you're going to do. You stand out from the crowd because there's so many contractors that don't do those simple basic things. If you're going to send them a proposal, send them a proposal when you say you're going to send it to them. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to show up on a certain day, show up on that day. Like it's very simple, basic stuff, but those are things that set me apart. I feel like it's just being quick, getting contracts out quickly where my competitors would take 3 or 4 days. I would get it while I'm on the phone with them.
Sure.
It's a process, speed, all that stuff, it matters. And yeah, you'll set yourself apart by just doing those simple things.
I love it. On to the next hit or miss rapid fire. Hopefully quick answers. I have a bad habit of making these a little bit longer. So if you need to dive in, feel free. First one, hit or miss. Most service businesses are ran on hustle and not systems.
100% hit. Yeah, that's what I mean, oh, I don't know. It's definitely not the right thing to do, but that's 100% how it is. Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if is that considered a miss? I mean, I don't know.
I think it's a hit, but maybe should be a miss. Maybe,
Yes.
educate, reflect, and find ways to do things better. Um, Next one, and we've missed, we've talked about success in scaling and things, but the little things, the day-to-day things that go in that, we haven't even dove that deep in terms of hiring or all those sorts of different things, marketing, sales. We'll do it a little bit here. Hiring is the most difficult part of scaling a business, hit or miss.
That's a tough one, man. I mean, back in the day, I would tell you that, yeah, that's a true thing. But as I got educated and start really learning, hiring is basically if you have to be marketing yourself. And again, going back to making content, when I started making content in 2020, I didn't know I was making content for my customers. But what I didn't realize is like, whoa, people are now coming to me because they want to work for me. They're finding my content. They're like, hey, I want to work for this guy. You know what I mean? So like, I didn't expect that, but 100%, hiring is, you have to be marketing yourself and your business, and people will come to you. And then, yeah, obviously you got to have everything in place in order to give them a good experience. But yeah, no, for sure. It's not as difficult as people say if you're doing the right thing as far as, marketing for talent.
Yeah, I love it. Hit or miss. You need to niche down your service offerings to be successful.
That's definitely 100%. I believe in that. When I got into this roofing space, there's a lot of companies that do roofing, siding, windows, gutters. They offer all these things, and that's great. And, maybe, they could be successful in that. But what I found is niching down to doing one thing and doing something that's, super profitable. Like that's 100% where I would put my focus in. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. It's literally, I'm just doing roofing. I'm not offering any other services. And that's what we're concentrating on.
Incredible. And you're already, kind of building in that referral program that you got going on, which is smart. That's why you do what you do. Hit or miss. Last one here. Not every business is able to scale, even if they want to.
I would say it's true for sure. That's because like that's the issue I had in my last business. I mean, it wasn't really scalable, really. That's why I wanted to get out of it.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to scale it. All the red tape and the licensing and the reporting and the specialized employees and all that stuff. It just wasn't a super scalable business. It's not, you start to learn about different business models. And, that's one thing I would say too, is try to find a simple business model, not too complicated. Because, when you're doing it, like I didn't know, that's why I grew up in the industry. I didn't know that was a difficult business model until I started consulting other businesses. And I was like, whoa, this is definitely a lot easier business model. I'm like, really? This is like a cheat code.
Yeah. I love it. Incredible. Last question here, or more, I guess it's kind of a question. Number one piece of advice that you would give somebody who is just getting started in a service business?
So number one, well, there's two things I'm going to say. So number one is focus. 100%. You have to focus on what you're doing. Don't go in any other direction. Don't chase top line revenue. Don't go after like a bunch of different services. Try to hyper focus on your most profitable service. And then number two is you're going to want to start tracking your time. This changed my life when I started doing this. I did a 2-week audit where I literally tracked 15-minute increments of exactly what I was working on for those 15 minutes, whether that was a phone call, an email, a sales call, accounting. I was doing, whatever I was doing, maintenance, whatever I was working on, I wrote it down, 15-minute increments. And then I looked back after 2 weeks and I was like, all right, what do I hate out of this list? Yeah. And you can start delegating that list of the stuff you hate. You'll begin to love your business again. It's like, whoa, it doesn't rely on me to do these things that I hate doing. Yeah. And you put those systems and processes in place to hand off of those things. You're not just saying, hey, to do this for me. You actually have to put systems and processes in place. So it's easy to hand off. And then you could track to make sure it's being done properly. But yeah, that changed my life for sure, is that 15-minute time audit.
That's such a cool answer, especially, we've talked about a lot of big things, scaling, selling, but, looking inwards, taking a step back and focusing your day into 15-minute increments, and being able to do a whole bunch with that information and delegate and do all those things. Incredible. Last thing for you. How can people find you? Where can they get in contact if they want to work with you? We'll send links or put links in the description, but where can people work with you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, also on YouTube. You can find me at, I believe it's Teddy_Slack is my personal account. It's where Modern Contractor TV is hosted, where I interview a bunch of different vendors and people that are, help working, that help with inside of your, service-based business, whether that's finance, marketing, sales, operations, leadership, hiring, all types of different people that help inside of your home service business. I try to give them a platform to help other contractors. So you can find me on YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm on X as well.
Love it. And we'll link to, I'll email you in a few weeks once you get the other channel for the subcontractors and what you're doing with the in-person studio. We'll update that and get that in the description, send people that way as well, because I know that's something I find interesting, and I think a lot of other people will as well.
I think it's gonna be great, man. I'm excited about it. And, honestly, I think once I get it going, I hired a full-time person that's literally helping me with B2B development. So his whole entire job is reaching out to these contractors and nurturing them, inviting them in, taking their coffee, bringing donuts to them. That's all his job is. So I believe I'll have 100 contractors come in my office in the next 12 months. That's the goal. And I'm excited because I think it's something that other people, if they wanted to, try this and I think it could be a great source of income or referral work as far as generating revenue for a business. Especially going into the AI world, man. AI, with this new search marketing and all, it's all going to change, bro. Like the PPC, all this stuff is going to change. People aren't going to go to Google as much. So I'm like, you got to think outside the box. I feel like this could be something that other people can implement in their markets and it could work,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned more than I think I ever could in a 52-minute interview here. I'm sure people will glean the same bit of information. Thank you, Teddy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on, Jack.